Okay. Hey, everyone. It's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. And I am here with Garage Geek, leader of the Garage Army, or David, aka David.
It's nice to be here. Thank you.
I'm really glad that you were up for doing this. Um, I have become addicted to your channel and I watch every video, even though they're not all about comics.
They are not. In
so,
fact, can we start talking?
yeah, yeah.
Are you done with your intro?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that your channel covers movies and books and what you did that week and comics and music and vinyl. A huge part of it is the vinyl part.
Yeah. So the vinyl community were the first ones to accept me, and so I went in a vinyl vein. But I don't know if you could see around. Like I've got vinyl to this side of me. I've got books. I've got pops. I've I'm very eclectic. And I wanted my channel initially to just kind of buck that trend, and that was one of my like greatest concerns when I started, because I didn't think I would find my niche, right? Because I knew like I would have to only make vinyl videos so that I could be in the vinyl community or
Right.
comics, but I would do everything, and everyone kept giving me the advice: make 3 or 4 different channels. And I did not want to do that. I fought that tooth and nail every time somebody would tell me to do that. I just stuck to trying to be eclectic. And I always wonder, like, would I have a lot more subs now if I had only been vinyl or only comics? But you know what? It doesn't matter, because in
Right.
the long run, I've met so many cool people, and I'm very happy with all the interactions that I have. And I think you've done this. You've like, hey, subs don't really matter. And I have to remember, you know what? They don't,
No.
because like I have 500 subs now, and I might get 30 views on a video, and
Right.
those
But
are the ones that
you get a
matter.
lot of comments per the number of views you get on your videos.
Yeah, because I'm
So
always begging people, hey, don't forget to comment.
no, because people are engaged because you're interesting, and so it's fun to chat with you.
Thank you.
But
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
thank you.
So yeah, and I think by sticking to your guns over the long term, you'll have the community you want out of it, rather than just the one, fitting yourself in and doing all those different channels. I don't know. So I think you made the right choice.
Thank you. Yeah,
I
so I mentioned Larry's Library, right? And he has a strictly comic channel. And he just made a new channel, and his first video was unboxing a flashlight. I kind of make fun of that in my most recent video.
right.
But at the same time, I'm thinking, you could have just put that on your regular channel or added it on. But people really want to be compartmentalized, right? And like I
Yeah.
said, I always try to I would unbox a flashlight in one of my videos. I don't care.
Yeah. I I mean, I personally made my channel mostly comics, but I can throw in other stuff when I want to.
Mm.
Like you've seen when I a long time ago did a thing about my record collection and that sort of thing. And I do book hauls, science fiction book hauls and stuff.
Oh, I'm getting ready to call you out for a vinyl challenge, so be ready. You don't have to do it, but
Okay, you do a lot of challenges and tags and contests, and I do not.
I know.
So do
So
not feel insulted by me not
I
responding
gotta like
because
grab you and pull you in. No, the thing is, I I admire you and your comics and the type of comics that you show, and you do so many independents. And for me, and I love when you switch the camera and you go into the comics and flip the pages. I love that, right? Because I don't normally buy independents, but they're so important in the field. Um, but you've mentioned that you like vinyl, and I think you showed it once or twice, and you've talked about it. So I gotta like get that out of you. I'm just like there's a challenge.
no,
We are Video Central. Go ahead.
like a while ago you did, and some other people I know did the what was it, top 10 albums that you've listened to the most in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about doing that, but I would have had to do a long edited video because I don't own that vinyl. I couldn't just hold them all up. I don't, because
Oh,
most of them I listened to mostly in my childhood and mostly they're gone.
so you don't like doing that?
I
Like I'm
don't have
always
my
constantly
I don't have
throwing
my
pictures.
Partridge Family album.
Oh,
for
So
instance.
you don't like throwing pictures in. Like for me,
Well,
it's easy. I'm so used to it, but it is time consuming to
and
edit.
everyone else doing it, it was about their vinyl. I don't collect vinyl. I have some vinyl and I like it. It's kind of like a rabbit hole I don't want to go down.
No, you are absolutely right not to. Every time somebody is on, like, oh, I really like this, I should buy it. Like if I show something, I'm like, you absolutely should not. Admire what I show. Do not start buying that stuff. Right? Like, I mean, that's like the beauty of
Right.
YouTube. You know, YouTube really does, like for a person like me with such a collectionist mentality, every video I'm like, oh, I want that. And I start looking it up on
Right.
Amazon and eBay. And I'm like, it's so dangerous. So we have to be able to like, oh, I really like what you have, and I don't really need to go out and buy that at this
Right.
point. But my mind doesn't work that way always.
Well, I
And you can
love
tell.
finding out about cool albums from you and from cool comic books that I never heard of, but it does become too much.
Absolutely.
So I would like to slowly buy more vinyl, but I don't think I'm going to do a vinyl channel or make vinyl a big part of my channel because I think I would buy too much.
And so what I do is, for every kind of challenge like that, as you know, I would show my 10 vinyl, but then I would also show my 10 comics.
Right.
And I think I did that.
Which sucks me in. You're 2 for 1 or you're 3 for 1
I always, and
videos.
like a
Yeah.
challenge, I just
You
did
do.
a challenge this morning, and it's vinyl. And I showed trading cards. I showed my 3 most recent books that I purchased. I showed comics. So when I do a challenge, that's when I try to get eclectic and I bring it in.
Right.
And I tell them, look, if that disqualifies me, whatever, that's just, then disqualify me. But I'm going to show what I want to show in my videos.
Well, you have the energy to do more videos a week than I do.
I'm
So
telling you, it's a time sucker.
I know. So maybe in the long run, you may not do as many challenges and stuff.
I've
If
slowed down.
you may say, well, my most important show is my Friday night chat, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So you may say, well, I only have time to do my Friday night chat this week. And that's what happened to me over the years. I'm like, I've done so many videos. I want to do my videos that I want to do. And every once in a while I do a contest or something, but mostly I just ignore them because I barely have time to get to do what I want to do.
Yeah, I hear you. But the thing about contests for me, it's so cool because it makes me go into my collection with a focus and find things and pull them out that I normally wouldn't. And so that's really a lot of fun. In fact, I called you out on the Friday night comic challenge this week.
You've challenged me several times and I've ignored them all. And
He's struggling because not many people are doing them.
Uh-huh.
And I know even if you did it once, you probably wouldn't do it again, but you've got a large audience, and that would expose other people to maybe going to his channel and doing it, which, it's kind of the thing. And I'm like, hey, you got a lot of Commandy from the 70s. I know it. But,
I have a lot of 70s comics. It would take me a week just to decide
to go through them.
What would be the top.
I hear you.
And also I have most of them over in a storage facility. So I'd have to go over there.
I want to get into that storage facility when you're not there. I'd leave with a bunch of good stuff.
Maybe I'll just lock you in there for 2 hours and then let you out afterwards and you can take.
No, I got to own it. It's not, I can't just look at it.
No, you can take whatever you manage to find in those 2 hours.
Awesome. I'm down.
So you have this super eclectic channel. What was there some like turning moment where you decided, hey, I'm going to do this channel? Was it building up in your head from watching other people's channels, or just you're on your own? Or
yes. So actually, I tried a couple videos about 6 months before I actually launched. They're there, and I think I showed this crazy comic book, which I don't know if you remember this comic book. What was it called? It was about all these people who like are into torture. It's like this independent comic. It's like there's like these warring torture groups, and they film.
It's not crossed then. No.
Not crossed. I have it in my mind, and
Well, I definitely do not want to read it.
No.
I
And
don't
I
enjoy
reviewed
it.
that, and then I reviewed a bunch of like playing cards that I got. And
Uh-huh. Oh,
even
that's
at that
cool.
point, I was just trying it out, and I was being eclectic. Um,
What inspired you when you were first trying it out? Like, what made you decide to do it?
so, believe it or not, I really don't have any friends who are collectors. I do have friends, but no
Yes.
one collects. And being a collector like this and not having anyone to share this stuff with is really soul crushing. And so YouTube is a real outlet for me to be
Yeah.
able to like talk about the things and why I love them. Because I would tell my friends, hey, I'm going to the comic book shop, and they're like, okay,
Right.
I bought this album. Oh, nice. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Right.
so this is kind of like, even I said to someone yesterday in a comment, this is like therapy for me,
Right.
outlet of for my passions.
And that's the other, it can become a time suck, but on the other hand, you make friends who have the exact same passion you do, rather than just people who are nice who you like hang out with.
Oh,
So it's a
we have to go back because I wanted to talk about the challenges. We kind of glossed over
okay.
that. But
Yes.
that was a major evolution in my YouTube channel. Now, I watch a lot of vinyl videos where people just say, "Hey, I bought this album, and I bought this album, and I bought this album. This is a great album." I've gotten some flack for this, but I criticize those videos because if you say this is a great album and then you just move on, like I haven't learned anything. So I wanted to be a little bit different. So if you watch some of my earlier videos, I would take a complete album and I would include a clip from each one, and I would
I
talk about
remember that. And
style
then
and
you were trying to figure out how much time you could put a clip on without getting a copyright
and
notice.
I kept getting copyrights. But for me, I'm getting a sense of whether I like the person now. Like what I have to do when people are saying, "Hey, this is a really cool song," and I follow them, I actually pause the video. I go to Spotify, I listen to it, and I go back in the comments and I write about it because I want them to see that I'm engaged with
Right.
their content and not just like watching them and moving on, right? And so I want them to say, "Hey, I listened to that. Oh, that was an interesting track. Oh, I didn't particularly like that." So I started doing challenges. I would I would say, "Hey, that album sounds really interesting. It's way out of my ballpark. If you want, you listen to this album, which is way out of your ballpark, and then I'll listen to yours, and then we'll come back." And for a while, it really took off. A lot of people were getting into it, but it basically I roped in a lot of metalheads. I don't know how that happened, but I listened to a lot of this death metal. Like this is stuff that I'd never listened to in my life, right? But I still have a lot of those people who follow me now, and I
Right.
still follow them. And
And what did you get them to listen to?
Chris Isaac, Linda Ronstadt, I got them to listen to some classical music pieces. Um, I'm
Wow.
trying to think what else. Just things that I love. Like there's an album called Trio, that is Linda Ronstadt, Dolly Parton, and Emmylou Harris. I think it's one of the greatest recordings ever, and I forced them to listen to that. And like this is music. I don't know if you know him, Kim. I still remember he called it melancholic. He kept saying it's melancholic, because he's from Denmark, and so he uses the word melancholic all the time. So I told him that's his trade word now. Um, so yeah, I would just get people to listen to things. Oh, and even with him, he loves like surf, punk, thrash, and he gave me a 10-song playlist of like his favorite tracks, and I gave him 10 mariachi songs
Uh-huh.
because I live in Los Angeles, such a popular form of music here, and he'd never heard any living over in Denmark. So
Right.
that was a really interesting, like, kind of cultural, sharing. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's one way that YouTube can kind of like bring us together, but it's just like sharing of knowledge, right? And so, like I said, I always rebel against those videos. Like, here's my record I bought. Yay! Look at me, I spent money.
Well, there, I've done
But you
just
go
plain
into them and show them.
in some videos, but I've also done just plain hauls.
So do I. I do them too.
I think
But
anything people do is fine, but I do appreciate different people doing different things, and going into. I do appreciate the people who do go into depth onto things. I also, one way, just a side note, one way I keep up with at least some of the people I follow is I have a YouTube subscription, so I don't see ads. But the other thing is you can listen with the audio, with the screen off. So the people who talk a lot, I'll listen to them like podcasts while I'm doing my endless attempt to lose weight by doing long walks. And so,
Oh, that's cool.
and then every once in a while, I'm like, oh, I got to see what they're showing, and I pull out my phone. So a lot of your Friday chats, I'm listening to more than I'm watching. I mean, I wish I could watch the whole thing because you show a lot of stuff, but I can't keep up with everything unless I do that.
That's true. I listen at double speed every video, unless
You
they
mentioned
have
that.
a clip of a song. I put it on regular and I listen to the clip and I go back. I listen to all my audiobooks at double speed, so this is something I'm used to, right?
Right. So my voice must sound strange to you right now.
It's really funny because one time I put clips of people into videos, and one time I forgot to change it back, and so I got this. I think it was Wicked Records. I got him sped up, and I didn't even realize it because I'm so used to hearing his voice. It sounded normal to me, and then later I was like, "Oh my God, everyone thinks he sounds like a chipmunk."
Right. You can tell people all your YouTube friends are chipmunks.
Yeah.
Okay. And another thing, you don't like do long book reviews, but I love it when you cover books that you've read. And I think a lot of what you read, at least a percentage of it, is science fiction, which I have a long, but you also like kind of the literary novels, the kind of things that might win the Booker Prize and stuff.
Yeah,
So
I brought a whole bunch of stuff.
I like that mix of things.
Wait,
so I wanted to segue from talking about how you started your channel to what did Young Garage Geek, what were some of the books that first got you interested in reading?
So I actually brought
or comic books or comic books or
I love this as a kid. Now, of course, when you're young, you can't remember everything that you read. But I particularly remember Ferdinand and Caps for Sale and Where the Wild Things Are and Chicken Soup with Rice. So I think I really appreciated the art of Maurice Sendak when I was young.
Right.
And I loved this one. Have you ever?
I don't know that one. Is that Maurice Sendak?
I'm going to read it to you right now. No.
Okay. So let me make you larger. You can show us some pictures.
So this is by Esfir Slobodkina.
That's easy.
I said it right. So basically, this poor cap salesman, sorry, it's opposite when I hold it up. He goes around the villages and he sells caps, and he fell asleep under a tree one day, and he woke up and all the caps were gone. And he looks around everywhere. He's like, where the heck are my caps? And so basically this tree full of monkeys, they each stole one of his caps.
Wow.
And they won't give the caps back.
It's coming back to me. I have read this one.
So he's yelling at the monkeys, and they start mimicking him. So when he stamps his foot and says, give me the caps back, they stamp their feet. So he tricks them because he takes his cap and he throws it on the ground. So then they do that, and he gets all his caps. And he walks away happy. So there you go. I love that as a kid.
Do you recall, did you read that, discovered on your own, or did you, a parent or a teacher read it to you?
I do not remember. But I remember also reading and loving Ferdinand. Now, do you know Ferdinand the Bull?
Yes,
I
remember.
So
I don't remember the specifics, but I remember that I've read Ferdinand at some point.
Now I can totally understand why I love Ferdinand, right? So I don't know what was in my brain, but I related to Ferdinand. So Ferdinand is this bull who refuses to go to the bullfights. He wants to sit in the field and smell flowers under the tree. And then they force him to bullfight. I can't remember what happens in the end, but they realize like he's really tough and he beats them all, but he just prefers to sit in the field smelling his flowers. So I loved Ferdinand as a kid too. So yeah, but you can understand like these books, pictures, art, so much art in these. I still love these. And when I hand one of these to one of my students, they're like, a picture book? What the heck? Because they have to rebel, right?
Right.
Because their reading levels are low, and they think I'm handing them a baby book. And I sit there and I tell them why I love them and why I appreciate art. And
And
then they
your
start reading.
teenagers, I mean, your students are teenagers, middle
Yeah,
school?
yeah. 7th and 8th graders. Like I taught 8th grade for the longest time. This year I'm teaching 7th grade.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
So
So go
so
ahead.
they think they're too cool for picture books.
Yeah, because picture books are associated with children, young
They
children,
are. They are.
and they are. But they, many of the kids, realistically, they have 2nd and 3rd grade reading levels,
Right.
and so you have to build them up. And so I try to do it in a way where everybody in the class will be working on, looking at something like this. And so
Yeah.
that when I do give them something like this in the future, like, I'm not singling them out, but it's very difficult because they will sit there, like they pick a book that's above their reading level. And then they sit there and they're looking around the room or they start making noise. I'm like, oh no. I grab the one and I plop it. I'm like, you're going to read this. And when you do that, they actually will start reading because you forced it on them. They didn't pick it themselves. It's like this psychology.
Because they're self-conscious, right?
Yep.
At that age, very self-conscious.
Yeah. So I'm forcing these picture books I do.
Right.
So another book that I really remember was The Phantom Toll Booth. Now this is jumping ahead a little bit.
Yes, I loved that as a kid.
Teachers read it to me, and as a class. It is a great book, isn't it?
Yes, it's crazy.
Yes,
I reread it with my daughter, I don't know, 6 years ago, and I was amazed how crazy it was because I only remembered a little bit of it.
Yeah. So I actually haven't reread it. I'm actually rereading a lot of children's books right now. In fact, I love the Newbery Award, and I try to read or listen to that every year. And I've gone back in the past to reread all of them, but I haven't done it. There are some really, really amazing books on the Newbery Award, and just because they're for children doesn't mean that an adult can't enjoy them. Yeah.
Do you have time to do a read aloud segment in your class where you read to the class?
I used to do that, and I used to do it a lot, but I've kind of gotten away from it since we have computers. So what happens is every text that we now have, you kind of what do you call it? You project it onto the screen. And there's an audio. Someone reads it and it highlights it as it goes along. So that kind of eliminates the need for me to do something like that. And of course, I stop it periodically and I talk to them about what's going on. So, so that I can make sure that they're following along. But yeah, it's kind of, that's the way literature has gone. We don't really expect kids to read it on their own. Like even when they have tests, they can click the audio of the text and they can listen to it as it goes along. Yeah,
your school is
very changed.
Your school is more computerized than the ones my daughter's gone to. She's now just starting her sophomore year in high school.
I think it's up to the teacher though, because I know a lot of teachers at my school. Like I'm always like promoting the use of technology, right? Because we have this initiative called 21st Century Skills, but so many teachers don't use it.
I was just thinking about if you're a teacher who reads out loud to your kids, then you tend to go back and find which books, work best and stuff. But I guess you find which books work best for the computer to read to your kids.
Exactly. Well,
or maybe you have less choices. I don't know.
Yeah. You know what? The teacher actually has a lot of choice. But what I do is I backward plan. So I find out what the the writing task is. And then there's a student model, and the student model uses a couple of texts from the unit. And so for them to get the most out of the student model, I always teach those texts so that they can understand the student model so that they can then write their own. So for me, it's the end product kind of dictates the text that I'm going to teach in the class. Listen to us going over.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're talking about things like Phantom Toll Booth, I wondered, if you would have an opportunity to read it out loud to your class. But anyway, it's a different situation. So that helps you remember children's books better than perhaps other people do. because they're part of your work.
Yeah, and for example, a lot of the texts that we cover, they are part of children's book. Like I'm getting ready to teach a section from Ricky Tikki Tavi, the
Right.
scene with Nag and Nagina. And so, I mean, I'm constantly like in the children's lit world.
Right. So you're having your own memories and probably learning about new children's
Yeah.
texts. But so back to little David. So do you think Phantom Tollbooth was one of the, you said a teacher read that to you.
Yes.
Do you remember, like, once you got past picture, or you can talk about picture books more, but once you got past picture books, do you remember what like struck your fancy at some point?
Yes. So first, let's go back to comics. So my older
Yeah. Oh
brother,
yeah,
he
comics.
collected
Yeah.
Marvel, and he would occasionally buy me some DC because he didn't want me touching his Marvel, but that didn't stop me. I ended up reading all of his Marvel comics, and
Right.
so I was first introduced to comics. I remember having a color form. Do you remember color forms? They were basically like a sheet of plastic, and you had these like plastic things that you threw on it, and like could move them around. They were like,
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
think they were called
They were
color.
geometrical shapes that you
Yeah,
could.
I had a
Yeah,
Batman
yeah.
one.
I had that. Yeah,
Yeah, and so you had all these
I did
different
not have a
Batmans
Batman.
and Robins that you could pose all around the scene, like Joker, and then you'd have like cars or like I don't know, like safes or whatever related to criminals. And I remember having a color form of Batman, and I must have been very young for that. But like I said, my brother would buy me Batman and Superman comics, but I just went right into his Marvel, and I read all of his Marvel. But I do remember my older brother was also into science fiction, so
Uh-huh.
probably because of him, I also went into science fiction. Um, but I really like science fiction, so I don't
So
know if that's just something I really latched onto because of him, or also because of me as well.
you were pretty young when you got to read your brother's comics. Do you?
Yes, I mean I was like he was buying them for me when I was like 5, right? 5 or 6. But I'm
Right.
talking over a period of a couple of years. I would
Right.
move in on his Marvel territory, right? Because Marvel
Yeah.
is at that time, Marvel and DC were very different, right? DC was kind of jokey, but Marvel was very serious in
Right.
many ways, and
Right.
so
Things mattered in Marvel in a way
exactly
that they
they
didn't in
were
DC.
soap opera or whatever we call like they were
Yeah.
episodic, and they would continue from one issue to the next, whereas DC everything would wrap up and they would be self-contained. And so I think I just kind of moved into that episodic. I just started to prefer it more.
So
But then
were you a pretty avid reader already at
I
5, or were
think
you more
so.
looking at the
Not
pictures?
I can't remember, but I
Ah,
think I did read a lot because I'm going to move into The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. So I remember reading those. Now I'm kind of in like middle school, but
right.
I read those, and I often talk about this. I had a record player in my room, and it was probably like some kind of crappy like Crosley one, but I played Gary Newman's Telecon the entire time I read Lord of the Rings. So if I put on Telecon, I
You'll think of Lord of the
immediately
Rings.
get thrown into the Lord of the Rings. They're intertwined. Like I listen to that album over and over. It's a great album, by the way. But it's
I
funny
don't
how
think I
those
know
kind of
that one
things
album.
can become enmeshed.
Yeah. I've experienced the same thing. When I was 11, I read Dune, and at the time, Bachman Turner Overdrive's song "You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet" was on the radio all the time, and I associated that with the plot of Dune.
Yeah, you ain't read nothing yet. I just finished the last. I told you the last Dune
Yeah,
book, and I want to kind of do an overview of those. Like those books are cray cray.
yeah. I I think I last reread the entire series maybe 15 years ago, and I remember just like feeling like something really went wrong with the last 2 books.
Yeah, it's so political, and it's very repetitive. It's like they
Yes.
just jump in the future, but then he has the same situations. I kind of feel that's a little bit of a flaw, unless he's trying to point something out. Haven't quite figured that out
Yeah.
yet.
Well, if he had lived longer, maybe he would have done more books that would have shed light on those. But I think the first 4 books are pretty much everything he wanted to say,
Yeah,
and then it repeats
yeah.
in a different way. and he blows up the planet. Spoilers, I just spoiled
Dune's gone, and then they have to make a new one.
it.
I'll just add to the spoilers since you did it.
And then I tried, sorry for the sidebar, but then I tried a few of the prequels written by his son and this hack writer. They were so bad.
Are they?
And I was like, you know how there's people who want to read everything in order. If someone felt they had to read all the bad prequel novels before they read Dune, it would be horrible.
They would be, yeah. No, I'm actually looking forward. There's one called House Harkonnen.
Right.
And those are the best villains. And
they're
just gone later. And I'm like, I want more Harkonnens. Those people were creepy. They were the best.
Well, I can only hope then those writers of the prequels got better by the time they wrote House Harkonnen. I tried the first 2 prequels. I forget what they were called, but
yeah,
they were horrible and they were forgettable, and everything in them was obvious. Like, oh yeah, this is what they mention happened in the past in Dune. So then they just sort of fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
Anyway, so a major milestone for you was The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
Yes, Lord of the Rings. And I read all through high school. I'm going to mention a friend.
Comics and books, or did you leave off on comics at some point?
Both. I all through high school and even up into college, I was always reading comics. I did stop at the 90s, right? So for me, the 90s are just this, like, I did not like the art. People love Jim Lee, and he's a great artist, but he doesn't do anything for me. Nothing.
Me either.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see his appeal. And he is. I can look at
the best of them. There was a lot worse artists.
Yeah. Oh man, the stuff is atrocious. But the people who grew up with that stuff, they love it. Like,
right.
It's like that's their stuff. And I hate to say, oh my God, it's so bad. But to me, it's just like when I look at it, I'm just like, ugh.
When you started reading comics and going from the DC to Marvel, what era do you think that was? I know you were very young, but
I think I know the exact comics I started buying. Mm-hmm. I remember in the Avengers, I have it. It's the Korvac saga and the one where there's Beast upside down on the cover. I remember buying those, but I read all my brothers. And so right. I remember, I mentioned this so much because the Defenders around issue 20 to 30.
Uh-huh.
And those are my favorite comics ever.
Probably that's when Steve Gerber was on it, probably.
I can't remember, but I know, like, I'm so bad with these names, but I know Steve Gerber also did, like, right. I think Man-Thing, Howard the Duck, and Omega the Unknown.
Right.
I love all of those.
Steve Gerber at Marvel was the craziest author of them all, writer of them all at the time.
I think he's later, though.
Maybe. It might have still been Steve Englehart, who is also a very good writer.
Yeah, this is the time where you have Sons of the Serpent that goes into the Guardians of the Galaxy, that go into the Badoon. It's just some crazy stuff, but they're so good. And they had like 30 people in each issue, right? There wouldn't just be the main 4 Defenders. There would then be all this cast of, it was like bigger than the Avengers in many instances. I also remember reading the X-Men. Like, I started with 198, and to this day, the Sentinels are so awesome. And I love that scene where, they get, Scott gets blown out of a high-rise building, and he's like hanging on there until Storm, and they're on the ground, they're like, hey, isn't that Scott hanging from a rafter? And she goes up and gets him. And he'd been like hanging there. But the introduction to Wolverine, like, they didn't even know that his claws were like real. They thought they were just like fake, but that
part
they
of his gloves
came out of his, and they were in space with Magneto and like crazy stuff. It was so cool. Yeah. That stuff was so cool.
And you were reading, you were reading that like pre 10 years old.
I don't remember the age, but I was definitely reading all that stuff.
Because those are pretty complicated comics for a younger kid to read, I would think.
Yeah. But I do know that my brother
sounds like you're a very good reader.
And but at that age, you don't have to understand everything. Like, there are pictures.
Well, true. Yeah.
Right? You got all these images to help you through it. And that's another thing. Like, comics used to be written at a pretty high reading level, and many comics these days are written at a very, very low reading
Much
level.
smaller vocabularies.
And you can fly through them. But people, comics used to be, something that you could throw away, right? They were like a disposable
Right.
medium, but people would have to like read through them, and it would take time. It was just like, if you're going to spend your money on this is something that you're going to get some use out of, right? It was like
Right.
when people used to go to the movies, it would be like an all night kind of affair. Like you would have an intermission, you would have like an overture, exit music. Now people want to get in and out of the movies, and they don't even want it to be an hour and a half. If it's an hour and a half, it's too late. Now that trend is starting to change with these really long epic movies, and I'm kind of
Right.
happy about that. But
Do you
on a rant.
do you have any old comics or collections of old comics that you can keep in your classroom?
I had a classroom library for years, and I'm talking, I had a huge library. Every week, I would go out to stores and I would buy. I had an app, and I would look at the individual reading level of every book, and I would buy books and put them. And the kids knew their reading levels, and they had to get within that level to move up. And I mean, I'm talking. It was a library like this, and
Right.
every shelf had a reading level. And then the school decided, hey, the teachers aren't using the reading program, so we're taking it away. And I went up to him. I'm like, look at all my data. Look at how much I've moved the kids. Doesn't matter. The teachers aren't using it. It's not worth the funding. And that happened to me 2 to 3 times. They would get a new program. I would use it faithfully. The district would say, well, the teachers aren't using it, so we're going to take it away. But then they have to say, oh, but we need something for the kids to increase literacy. So they bring in another program and start it over. And at a certain point, I got so frustrated that I just gave all the books away. And I did not do that ever again. So now I do get boxes of like scholastic books. The school still gives it to us. I made every kid pick a book. And there's, for example, there are some comics like the Miles Morales. They had the first collection of Miles Morales. I made sure all of the kids got those. But yeah, literacy has really changed. It's everything on the computer now. They can go and get books online for free as part of the LAUSD system.
Right.
Because I'm in that district. So it's really kind of shifted to that, which in my opinion is a shame. I like tactile.
Right. Well, and I'm just thinking, if you provide, like we were talking about how you can read the pictures and you can get, that's a good stepping stone, I think, for a lot of us.
Yeah. I actually used to bring in comic books, and I would put them in the classroom, and the kids would periodically read them. If they wanted to keep them, I let them. I don't really do that anymore. I actually moved schools. So this is my 3rd school recently. And my classroom doesn't even have bookshelves. I have all the books out on the tables.
Wow.
And like, I want the kids to, I could order one, but it would take a while. But it's just a weird shift, cultural shift away from reading. Like, it's always promoted. Everyone says literacy, literacy, literacy. But when you get down to the nitty gritty of it, it's like, I wonder, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I hate, this is way off track now, but I hate how our society, when children are struggling with education, always blames teachers and not school districts. As a culture, we always say, oh, it's because teachers are bad. And it strikes me from all my experience and knowledge that, and I'm not, nearly involved in, I'm not that involved in it, but that it seems obvious that it's the teachers love teaching, at least when they start out, but it's the school districts that make these horrible, thoughtless decisions.
Well, I've actually talked about this a lot on my channel, right? It's the teacher's fault, it's the administrator's fault, and it's the parents' fault, and it's the child's fault, and the fault can go all around. It's a failure at every level, honestly. And yeah, teachers have to take some of the blame.
Right.
We do. But we can't have all the blame now.
No.
I mean, I could go into why. I could go into all four. I could do that. I mean, yeah, this isn't the place for it.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. It's reality. We brought work into this. Let's move into my show and tell. I brought show.
Yes, show more.
Okay, I'm gonna start with these. I brought these. So this is another failure of my channel, right? So I love art. I love talking about So I love talking about art.
Right.
And on my channel, I would periodically start talking about art books, and I would like break them down. So what I like to do is I would like, hey, let's look at this picture. And it's hard for me to point because it's the opposite direction. I want to point to this one. And I would like kind of read this and do research on the internet. And then I would come back and I would zoom in and talk about it and all that. And then people on my channel, they'd be like, hey, Garage Geek, that was great, but don't ever do it again. They don't want it.
I guess I missed those videos. I don't recall you talking about art.
That was before. So I learned quite early, like, oh, can you see behind me? There's a William Blake book. It's that yellow thing.
I see a yellow spine. Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. I just can't read this.
It's William Blake. It's the complete, I forget what they're called. Basically, he illustrated everything and then he wrote his poetry on it.
Right.
And I was reading, in fact, I haven't even finished it, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. And I was also reading Paradise Lost. And right next to it is a Doré with all of his illustrations of paradises.
Yeah.
And so I was going through and like people were saying, this is too much like school. So I abandoned that. But the thing is, I love talking about art, not just comic art. And so I kind of feel like I get limited to just talking about comic book art when there's like comic book art is a stepping stone to other types of art for a child.
Totally. Yes, it was for me.
Yeah. And so to be stuck, and I hate to say this about, I don't want to put anybody who reads comic books down. But if you're stuck on comic books and you think that comic book art is the highest form of art ever, you need to widen your perspectives. Because for me, comic book art is beautiful. It's wonderful. But like I just said, I also believe it should be a stepping stone for a child to get into other types of art.
Well, I'd like to reword that and say it should open other doors. But a stepping stone implies that it's at the bottom.
You're right. Because I don't think that, because there are so many great comic book artists that are innovative in the field of art. They are, and they do so many interesting things in the medium, and I don't think that it's the bottom at all. But a stepping stone in the sense that we can hook children with this type of art.
Yes.
But we can get them to move on to go to art museums.
Mm-hmm.
Once they're interested in this, but we're losing, like when a kid doesn't pick up a book, they lose that interaction with picture words, which leads to more words on the page and smaller pictures to eventually no pictures at all.
Yeah,
right?
I'm constantly telling my daughter, especially back when we used to read picture books, I was so jealous. I wanted adult books to have all these pictures in them too.
And that's why I still buy, I buy like kids books, and I just put everything on the floor. Sorry. So anyways, we're going to move on. This is about my reading evolution.
I want you to do some more art videos. Try it again.
I will. You've inspired me. I'm going to come back. And if people say, this is too much like school, Garage Geek, then
do it just do it Garage Geek. Just be Garage Geek and don't go into teacher mode, I guess. But just do whatever you want, really. I'll watch.
The first thing I'm going to talk about, I guess, is I grabbed a bunch of books from the Booker Prize. So I was very fortunate when I read a lot. I read a lot all through high school. But when I was in the military, I met a really good friend. She's still a very good friend of mine. And she turned me on to the Booker Prize. Now, I had read a lot of what's the American prize called? The Pulitzer Prize.
Pulitzer.
They don't compare to the Booker Prize. Now,
and the Army is where most people discover the Booker Prize, right?
So this Booker Prize is from England.
I know.
And
It's the
it
big, and it covers all the English territories too.
speaking countries, yes. And now they actually have an international Booker Prize that is even wider, that covers Asia and Africa, and those books are really interesting as well. But I'm going to talk about this really shaped my reading direction.
Uh-huh.
Because once I found out and started reading these books, I was hooked because these books are great.
So this
They
is
are
like
really,
your early 20s, are we talking about now?
yes. And this really sent me off in another direction that
A
I
new
never
direction.
recovered from. I still
It,
read these books
it's made you an
religiously every
international
year.
reader, we might say.
Yes, it broadened my. So I love American writers. Like Steinbeck is one of my. I can't get this center. Steinbeck is one of my favorite writers. He is my absolute favorite dead white guy. We're not supposed to like him, right? Because he's a dead white guy.
I
Nope.
guess.
Love him. I don't care.
I know you're not supposed to like Hemingway anymore. Did you ever like Hemingway?
Yes, like Hemingway. Sorry. So I like
I'm
all
not
of them.
You don't have to
They have
apologize.
something to add. They weren't
Right.
amazing for 100 or hundreds of years, and then all of a sudden they're worthless anymore. I get the
Yes.
argument. We do need to focus on other writers, but that doesn't mean we throw these away. But anyways,
Exactly.
love Steinbeck. So, anyways, American writers. I'm going to talk about my absolute favorite, which is Kazuo Ishiguro. He's my favorite author.
And has he won the Booker like twice or 3 times?
He's won it, yes. He might have even won it 3 times.
Which
I don't
is
know.
amazing.
Sarah
Not many
and
people.
Son, did that one win it? I can't remember.
I know he's won it, and I don't know which of his books have won it.
The one that was made into the movie with
Remains of the Day.
Thank you, Remains of the Day. It's an amazing book. And then I think he won it for the one about the giant. He
Did he win it for the one about the clones? Because people talk about that one a lot.
Yeah, that one's a really, really good one, but I don't think that one won.
Okay.
I think that one's called Once We Were Orphans. It might be. The thing about him is, which I really like, he writes in first person. Love the first person narrative. But every book he slightly changes what he did in the previous. It's almost like the same exact book, but he'll tweak something.
Oh, okay.
And so
I've only maybe read 2 of his books, or maybe 3.
Everything. For me, he's my top writer. So there you go. Kazuo Ishiguro. More recently, I was so fortunate. I got to see this guy live, and he actually signed these books live. Like, he wasn't dead. I mean, in person. But he signed our books, and this is when
Who is that?
Colum Toybin. Like,
okay, I've never heard of that.
Say that properly. I'm trying to think of a book that. Brooklyn, the movie Brooklyn. If you haven't seen this,
I haven't seen the movie.
Wow, the book is even better. So this is about a girl who leaves her family in Ireland and is trying to make it in New York around the turn of the century, and what it's like to be an Irish immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
This is very accessible. This one, Nora Webster, is almost the same, but it's written at a much higher literary style. This is very accessible, and wow, watch the movie if you don't read the book. So yes, so this is we had to get in line, and we had to hey, this is for David and Francisco, and then he went ahead and signed it, and we're there. So
Francisco, is it okay for me to ask Francisco your husband?
Yeah, he's my husband.
Yeah.
My
and does he have similar
beloved husband?
Does he have similar literary tastes?
No, but he does like. But he does like this, and he was so excited to go. Like, he read both of these books, and he loved this. And so for a while, we were picking books and reading them together, right? And so his first language isn't English, and so it is more difficult for him. But he does well in English, and so he really loved this book. This book is amazing. But like I said, it was such a treat to go and see this. See him,
right?
And he signed both of our books, and it was free. And we used to go to there's a bookstore in Pasadena. It's an independent bookstore called Vroman's, and now you have to charge. They charge for every author, which is such a shame. Yeah, because we would go and buy the book there. Not this one. We would buy the books, right? And that would allow you to get a signature, but they don't do it that way anymore. I think you have to pay and still buy. So I stopped going. I saw Nellie Olson.
I didn't know paying for signatures had gone into the book world too.
Yep,
That's disgusting.
yep. You know Nellie Olson, right, from Little House on the Prairie? What's
Oh
her
yeah.
name? Angstrom. She was so funny, but we saw her and we have it signed. It's called Confessions of a Prairie Bitch. Oh, I swore, sorry, but that's the name of the book. Confessions.
You can say bitch on my channel.
Okay, so it's
Just
the
don't
name
say
of the book,
fuck.
and so we got to see her. Nellie. That was a highlight. That was so awesome. So, anyways, I was into the Booker Prize. Here's a couple more. I have so many of them, but here's a South African. I can't hold it up right. This one. This is a South African writer.
Yeah, very famous. I'm trying to remember.
Kutsi, I think is how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
Love his writing. Love his writing.
I've only read one of his books.
Ooh. His Atonement. I think it's No, that's Ian McEwan.
Yeah.
The one, there's one where he's working in it's called Disgrace. That's the one you have to read. That is powerful. So anyways, that's J.M. Coetzee. And then Ian McEwan, this book. This one is quite
I didn't know McEwan had won the Booker Prize. I guess he has. I just didn't know it.
I thought he did. Now, here's the thing. The Booker Prize, every year, there's also 5 runners-up or nominees. And so I make it a point to read all of them. And so I kind of get confused about who won what or who did
So
what.
then you read them before their winners announced?
I try, but I don't always, because they're not always released in the US.
Right. That can be a problem.
But I don't mind reading them later, because the Booker Prizes, they're always interesting. Even if you don't like it, there's going to be something interesting about those books that you're going to take away from them. So I don't mind reading all 5 of them.
McEwan, is his book Atonement? Is that the one about the people who go up in the balloon and almost die?
No. Atonement is they made a movie of it, and it has Keira Knightley, I think. And
yeah, okay.
That's a devastating
What's
book.
The one with the balloon? Is that Everlasting Love or something?
Yes. And I actually don't think I read that. And they made that into a movie.
That's the first one of his I read. And so that's
his books always have weird, creepy twists.
That one was very creepy.
Like really creepy.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to Atonement because I want to spoil it. That book is devastating.
I read Atonement, but I don't remember it as well as the one with the balloon, if it's called Everlasting Love. And Child Out of Time, where the person turns away from their child for a few moments at the grocery store, and then the child disappears, and they never find out what happened to it.
Is that Everlasting Love?
No, that's Child Out of Time or Child in Time.
I don't think I've read that one.
It's a much earlier novel of his.
Okay. Yeah,
so I actually discovered him because science fiction book people talked about his early novels. They thought maybe he was a science fiction novelist, but then he went off in another direction.
The Comfort of Strangers, The Cement Garden. Oh yeah, The Child in Time. I haven't read that one. But First Love, Last Rites, In Between the Sheets. I've read The Cement Garden and The Comfort of Strangers. And The Comfort of Strangers is very weird. But Atonement, it's the whole thing, like the whole book is an atonement, and that's all I'm going to say. Right. It's really sad. But his books go in dark places, which, I like him for that. Hi, Angel. You want to say hi? Hi, Angel.
Hey.
All right. And I'm going to, the last show and tell that I have is I'm going to move into science fiction. Yeah. And I'm going to talk about a local author. She's from Pasadena, I believe. She has become famous, but nowhere near as famous as she should have. I think they made a show out of one of her, or they were going to. Her most famous book is Kindred, I believe.
Oh, Octavia Butler.
Yes. So you spoiled it.
Sorry.
I was building up.
I thought I was supposed to guess who it was.
No, but good guess, because you ding, ding, ding. You're right. So Octavia Butler wrote Kindred, and I read that first. I was actually reading that for like an ESL class, and we were reading it for some strange reason, and I was teaching it or something, and I was blown away.
That's an intense time travel book for a class, for an ESL class. That's an intense book.
Yeah, but it's actually always in the young adult section. So it's about a young girl who she's African American, modern girl, and she keeps time traveling back to plantation
But
times.
she's an adult, right? Doesn't she
Yes,
have a husband or a
yes,
fiance or something like that?
yeah, but I think it's written at a young adult kind of level, and
I
so
guess. I read it. I never occurred to me that it would be young adult.
yeah, and it's a fascinating story. But this thing is like she does have other series that I've read. They're very good. There's a lot of post-apocalyptic ones, but this one is bonkers to the nth degree. This is phenomenally written. You can discuss this thing for hours and keep finding new crazy details.
Is that like a couple of novels together?
Yes.
What are
So,
the names of the individual novels? I'm trying to remember if
and
I've
I
read
got this
those.
beautiful edition for $10.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So this is Dawn, Adulthood Rights, and Imago.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just
That
going to
that's
briefly.
very intense. Yeah, tell us about it.
So just the first beginning of the first book. The human race is gone. We don't know if these aliens destroyed them, but these aliens go around the galaxy and they take specimens and they mix their genes in, and then they clone, making the new, like, kind of like a mixed hybrid race.
Right.
And they wake the new kind of humans up, and these people are like kind of, I don't know, like Cthulian octopi. They're just like, they're very repulsive, and when humans see them, they go insane and they actually kind of try to commit suicide. But
Wow.
so they have these people that are like handlers that are getting the humans ready, because this species has like a vampiric kind of relationship with the people that they collect. And that's just the beginning. They want to repopulate worlds and spread their seed, but the people aren't human anymore. They're this like mixed hybrid. And man, does this get into culture and race and crazy sci-fi, and it's just slavery. It is bonkers, and it is so worth reading. This, to me, like, if you like sci-fi and you haven't read this, you need to read this. This is a
Yeah.
masterpiece. So, Damien, you've
I
got
need
one
to
more.
read that. I think
This,
I started it a long time ago. I
do
read a
not
bunch
give
of her
up.
other books.
It goes like, each book goes further and further. Um, it's crazy. So it starts with this woman waking up and not knowing what's going on, and she's in a cell, and she doesn't realize like she's a clone. And then these creatures come in, and they have to like get acclimatized to them, because your first they're so disgusting and repellent. Like, your first reaction is to almost, like, to go crazy or to kill yourself. But they have to get acclimatized, and they're like trying. It's from the first person point of view of this woman
Right.
waking up, going through this traumatic process, and they're eventually like, they want to mate with them. It's like insane. These books are so good. So it's just like the craziest sci-fi, and so that leads me into like loving sci-fi. I'm a big sci-fi person, as you know.
Well, sadly, I think she died around age 50 or something.
Yeah, she actually doesn't have that many books. I would say maybe about 15 to 20, and a lot of them are sets, like, not sets, series, like a series
Right.
of 3 books, and like the sower, the parable of the sower. There's a lot of like biblical references in her books. She's so worth reading. And if you
I
want a
agree.
light one, read Kindred. You're going to be hooked. You'll want to go deeper.
I wouldn't call that light.
Her style, like, it's not a difficult read.
It's
By
right.
light, I mean
The vocabulary, or it's a easy read,
easy read.
but it's
Light, easy.
it's an
You
intense
say
book.
potato and I say potato. Yeah, light, easy.
I would say it's one of the best books for thinking about slavery and what it was really about.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this one has slavery ramifications in a whole different way. It's pretty amazing.
There's another series, I don't know what it was called. The novel in it that I remember was called Mind of My Mind or something like that.
I don't think I read that one.
Okay.
I do need to read.
It was about these immortals with powers who had lived throughout the centuries.
That
and
sounds interesting.
so that makes a better light read. I think it was not as intense as not about slavery per se, and not about
Well,
mating
I'm
with.
going to tell you, I'm huge time travel, parallel universes. Those are
Uh-huh.
my jams. And so if it's time travel, I want to read it or I want to watch it. I don't care how bad it is. That's my genre. So I'm really happy that so many of the superhero movies have gone into those parallel universes, and that's like so interesting to me. And a lot of the Marvel movies are about time travel. In like they have plot devices that involve time traveling, and I'm very happy because that's the thing that I love about sci-fi.
Okay, so you're
More so
looking
than the rockets and space. I'd
uh
like that stuff, but I like the time travel a lot more.
you're looking forward to meeting your evil self from another universe.
Knock them off. There's this really interesting movie called Convergence. Have you seen that? It's one of my favorite movies. It's low budget, and it
I
deals.
really don't watch many movies the way you do, at least not anymore in my life.
Wow, this movie is so good. And here's the thing: it's a low budget. They basically sit around the table, and people go in and out of a house. But every time they go in and out of the house, they don't know who's coming back. And it's so bizarre. And the first like 30 minutes, they sit around the table and they have this conversation. They're having a dinner conversation, but everything they're saying is important for what comes later. And so if you watch it a second time, you really are keyed into, the conversations that they're having. Because it goes, like I said, it goes crazy because there's a comet going by and all these worlds are converging, and it's a low budget movie. So basically, they go in and out of the house, and other people come back in, and things are happening outside that later you realize it was like, it's really good. Watch it, Convergence. I
So
guess I could go on and on all day about things to recommend. I love sci-fi.
what have been are there other favorite authors you've had over the years?
Kazuo Ishiguro is my favorite. I loved Stephen
Right.
King all through high school. I read
Stephen
him. I
King.
kind of stopped reading Stephen King at a certain age.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
I actually think Dolores Claiborne is literary praiseworthy. Many of his books aren't, right? They are pulp. They're fun. They're
Right.
scary. But he can write a character to no end. You within a page or two, you are living that character. He is so good at doing that,
Right.
right? And bringing you in. Um, I
I
think
would classify a lot of his novellas, he has those collections of
the
novellas. Those
Mist.
are often many of them to me succeed at more than his normal level.
Yeah,
Uh,
his later books grew, and there's so much like filler in them
right.
that he could like wheedle down and make a really good book. But that's just the way he wanted
He
to
has
evolve.
writomania, he
Yeah,
just can't stop writing, which has served him well.
yeah, and so I mean that's the way he wants to do it. Let him
Yeah.
do it. I still listen to those and read those. They're just I think a good editor like it would serve him well, but they're still good and the ideas are fun, right? But I think Dolores Claiborne is like the epitome of like what he can do with a book.
Right.
Now his early novels are scary to no end. Salem's Lot is, I don't know, I haven't read it since like in a long time, but I remember that book being chilling, very scary. And Carrie, Cujo, Cujo being stuck in that car and like heating up over time, like these things are truly terrifying situations that he writes about.
Yeah.
Right? The Stand, like he started to going excessive there, but it's still kind of under control. They're great books, but also I mentioned The Mist as one of his short. I was enamored with The Mist. That that brings in like parallel universes, and he also revisited that I think in another story called or book, a short story from a Buick 38, where the car is
I
like
haven't read that
traveling
one.
through parallel
Huh.
universes to get somewhere like faster. I don't know. But
Roger Zelazny has a book about driving along roads that lead to parallel universes. What was the
maybe I
name of
read
that?
that one then. Maybe that's
What
what
was
I'm
that
thinking
called?
of.
Have you read much Roger Zelazny? What was it called? Roadside or something like that. Oh well, can't remember.
Yeah, no, I haven't. So yeah, that was the end of my show and tell. How long have we? I don't see a timer. Oh, we've gone over an
We've
hour.
been about an hour.
I'm a
Just about an
gabber.
hour.
Oh, because we're gonna cut off some of the beginning, right?
Yeah. So currently you're doing sci-fi, Booker Award type stuff and comic books. Is there anything else that we don't know about, or?
I often listen to classics. I mean, just like anyone, there are so many classics that I have gaps. So
Right.
I try to go back and also listen to,
You,
like, I
you
just
do a lot of
listened to
audiobooks, right?
Frankenstein. Yeah, because on the way to work, I get through like a book or two a week, depending on the size. Right? If it's longer books, then it could take up to 2 weeks. But if you think about that over a year, think about how many books you're getting through.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a lot.
Yeah. And so, like, I just reviewed Frankenstein. I had just listened to that for the first time. So I do have like these gaps. Like, who can read everything? Right. And so some
Nobody.
people say, how can you, be into literature and you haven't read this or you haven't read that? And I just say, well, that's true, but who has the time to read everything? At least, I'm trying to catch up and fill in these holes. Like, who's read every Mark Twain book? Like, he wrote 30 of them or more. Like, or Dickens. He was prolific. He wrote like 80 books. Like, I think I've read 5. So at a
I
certain
think
point
as
in
a
my
kid,
life,
I read almost every Edgar Rice Burroughs book, and there were 90 of them.
don't talk to me about that, because when I went to the Frazetta Museum and when I see people holding up copies of those books, the Conan and I want those things.
Right.
They're gorgeous in that art. I wish someone would just put out a book with all the covers and I could just buy that. Like,
there is a book with all the covers.
Well,
Sorry.
I haven't seen it. And
Okay.
you know what? There's another one. You're going to show it to me then. But there's another one that
I have too many wires around me to go searching through my.
You're going to like pull something.
I'm going to have to show it to you later.
All right. And then I was just looking at the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew books.
Mm-hmm.
Those things have beautiful painted covers. They're gorgeous. But if you want to collect all of them, like, you're going to have 2 giant shelves. But I was thinking, what if someone would just like take the covers and blow them up and then sell it as a coffee table book? I mean, those things, that would be gorgeous.
The covers on the Gold Key comics, which I know you collect. Most of those are by a guy named George Wilson. And in October, there's going to be an art book of George Wilson coming out. So I'm hoping that will have a ton of those covers.
Oh, I'll definitely have to get that. But what I do is I always wait till it's used, and I can get it cheap.
That's smart.
That's what I do. But
I usually get them through In Stock Trades that has 40% off. So
yeah, that's a good way to do it.
That is
I do buy
a hardback collector.
In fact, I'm waiting for an In Stock Trades. Now, listen, let's take a pause. We've talked a lot about me, and we're already an hour. But let's talk about you a little bit. I mean, Garage Geek is fascinating, and he's wonderful to hear about. I know that. But let's talk about Damien for a little bit, right? Would you like to talk about anything that you're reading or any of your influences? You've probably done this because you've interviewed a lot of people, and I've watched a couple of them, but not all of them. Like, I'm going back and looking at your old videos. Like, I try to do one every couple of weeks.
Right.
Yeah, I try to do that.
I just discovered YouTube says I have 1,000 videos, but I actually have 974 videos so far.
Wow.
But it's still a lot.
That is a lot. So you've been on YouTube for about 15 years, is that correct?
No. Going on 12. So I've been on for 11 plus, I think.
That's amazing. So I'm talking to YouTube royalty right now.
I am not. I am long-term YouTube slum.
So do you want to talk about your influences? Why did you make your first video?
Because I saw other people making videos about comics, and the way the YouTube algorithm then was for people like us, I think much better. So when I found one YouTube video about a guy talking about his personal history with comics. And then it was kind of like a tag that was going through the YouTube comic community at the time. Every other video that was part of that tag just appeared in the sidebar. And I watched every single one. And by the end of watching those, at the end of the day, I was like, I've got to make videos like these. And after a few days of thinking about it, I just turned on my computer and made my first video. And I was very nervous, as you probably experienced. And I just did something to get started, and then I slowly got a little better, and then I think I leveled off. But it was to talk to these other people because, like you said, you don't have collectors in your life. I never had anybody who was anywhere near as interested in comic books as I was. I tried to be a science fiction writer for a while, so I met a lot of people who loved science fiction. So I had that part covered, But comic books, nothing. And now I'm so used to talking to people who know so much about comics and are so into them. It's like I entered a whole new phase of my life, I guess. And so, tons of people who were doing it back then have dropped out, but I've just kept going because I enjoy. It makes me enjoy my reading of comic books more.
Definitely.
And then on top of that, I enjoy it. So at first it was just to make friends who read comic books, and now I like it for itself, and I like having friends who read comics.
Yeah.
But it's overwhelming because there was probably 50 people doing it when I started, and now I'm pretty sure there's about 1,000 within the kind of framework of what I would call the comic book community. And there's probably other outliers who have nothing to do with the community.
And there's niche channels, like niche things. So yeah, right. It's very interesting. I kept wanting to interrupt you because when you said, "Oh, I turned on my computer," I was thinking, that old AOL, like that sound when you turn on the computer.
Yes. Or you've got mail.
You've got mail. Yeah. I was thinking of that when you said that. Because 12 years ago.
12 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. If you think about how far we've come with technology in 12 years.
Right.
Insane.
Yeah. And I mean, generally I am more for physical media, but I don't know if you've experienced it, but over the lifetime of being a reader of comics, I go in and out, ups and downs. And my latest up in 2010, I guess, was getting an iPad. And I just went crazy with digital comics for a while. It was like a playground.
It's smart, to be honest.
And but that led me back to going to the comic book store and getting a pull list.
I know.
And then I discovered there's so many places to get comics cheap. I didn't know that in 2010. But starting around 2012 and 2013, I started discovering, stores with 50-cent boxes. There used to be a store that would have sales every now and then where you could fill a short box for $30.
No, there's nothing around me like that.
Yeah,
I need to move in the middle of something.
You need to move to Portland.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to come up and visit you one time. I'm going to say I'm not a good interviewer. I'm trying to think of another question for you.
Did you ever try to be a writer?
No.
I mean, a lot of people who are intense readers at some point in their life decide, hey, I'm going to write a novel. Whether or not
I realized pretty early in my life that I'm quite mediocre, and I had to like say, you know what, that's just the way it is. I'm not this huge intellect. I'm never going to be like, a college professor or someone who is a leader of a field. I'm not going to be, famous for starting something new or going into. I'm just an average Joe, and you know what? I've been fine with that.
Yeah,
so I live my average life. So yeah, I never.
Hey, and you can be the favorite channel of 10 people, and then you've succeeded.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right? Like,
no, I think that's good. I unfortunately thought I could have a career as a writer at some point, and I realized eventually. It took me a long time.
You gave up on yourself.
It took me a long time to realize most people don't make a living from it.
No, but did you try self-publishing now? Because the internet has made it so easy for people to publish things on like blogs and people can get discovered that way. And so what if you don't? Like, at least you put your writing out there, and some people might read it. I would go and read it.
But I'm not as interested in writing anymore. That's another weird thing. So, I mean, we're talking about my 20s and up to my middle 30s, and I'm 62 now.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is because I go to the science fiction book section and I don't get excited anymore. So I don't really want to write it if I don't get excited by it.
What's your favorite sci-fi book or series?
Well, Dune, the first
Dune?
4 Dune books. Um,
That's funny. I wouldn't put that in my top. It's very good, but it's funny how you went
but
right to Dune.
Dune, I first read when I was 11, and I've
Yeah.
reread it about 5 or 6 times over the years. I'm trying to think. Man, I haven't been asked that question in so long. One of my favorite non-science fiction books of all time is 100 Years of Solitude.
Yeah, that's a great book. Absolutely. I was going to tell you there was another book series that I read as a kid that put me into the science fiction avenue, and that was The Tripods by John Christopher.
John Christopher, yeah, I read those.
Those were amazing.
Yes.
Tripods.
I have not tried rereading those.
I haven't either, but they are written, for a young adult.
Yeah, but I
take that. And like I loved the Elric series when I was young. As an adult, I came late to the Ender's Game and Ender's World. But wow, and Being.
Yeah.
Those are mind blowing.
Those are good.
That author does, but this is the case where you've got an author.
Now we're told not to read him.
Yes, and I'm just like, wow, he's one of my favorites.
I really struggle with that. He basically got canceled from writing a Superman comic.
Wow.
Did you know about that?
No. So he wrote a Superman
comic. So
he
was announced that he was just going to write a 1-issue Superman comic in this sort of out of continuity series they had at the time. And some gay marriage advocacy group found out about it and publicized it and said, that he was a great enemy of gay people and gay marriage. And eventually no artist in comics was willing to draw that comic.
Wow.
So they never published it.
Yeah, canceling.
And I felt bad about that because
very, very.
He may be against gay marriage for his religious reasons, but he has a lot of good stuff to offer as a writer. And I just don't believe in, if he said gay people should be sent to the gas chamber, I would have a different feeling. But
it's a very, like, this is something that you could really go into because I like to divorce the person from the work, and I will appreciate the work. However, I'm a hypocrite because I'm also, I'm a vegetarian. I'm a vegan.
Yes.
I call myself a lapsing vegan. Right. I won't, like, when it comes to animals and animal cruelty, like, I will draw the line, and I think that everybody needs to be canceled there. But that's just my personal belief, right? That the way I live my life, right?
That's a lot of people to cancel.
Exactly. Cancel them all. There goes my YouTube channel because all my, but I don't know. I could talk about this for a long time. How, as humans, we can cut off parts of our brain and say, how we're very compassionate. And I don't want to get into religion because that's another thing that gets people hot and heavy. But when you're supposed to live your life with compassion and you have animals that live with you and you don't think about what is on your plate and what you're putting in your mouth, and you do it with glee, and you frankly say, I don't care. And it just, how do we turn that off as human beings? I don't get it, right? Yeah. Anyways, sorry if you're religious.
That would, I mean, that's beyond religion. Being against, if you say everybody who eats meat is having a moral problem,
I think if
you have a large number of people against you.
In the woods,
almost
like if you're
more than religion.
Like if you're doing it for, you're living that type of lifestyle. But when we go to a store and we pick up a product that has been involved in animal abuse in these factory farms, and we turn a blind eye to it. Like we don't
Right.
care, and we just go ahead and like, yeah, I'm like, ugh.
Like,
So
I was looking at used cars recently, and I don't want to get ones with leather seats.
I don't buy anything leather.
But
Nothing.
but I almost bought one with leather seats because it was the only one of the model I wanted. Because I was looking for an electric car to be good for the environment, and it came with leather seats. I didn't get it in the end,
I would
but
never buy it.
but I was considering it, even though I would never want leather seats. You know what I mean? It's just
But
it's hard to
that's
avoid.
also hypocritical of me because cars do horrible things to the environment. And so it's like, what am I going to quibble about, the seats that I get in the car when the whole thing is, bad? It's just
Right.
like there's so much that you could go into. And that's where this is really funny. That's where someone who attacks me, they would go that way. But I go right back to them, well, you don't even consider the least amount, right? Because you go after the car where you don't consider the other things. Like they're so fast to say, oh, you're a hypocrite. Like your shoes have leather, and well,
Mhm.
my shoes don't. Like I buy from Payless. I always have. And it used to be Payless was the only store where you could get plastic shoes. And it's actually all the rage now. Like almost all shoes are made without leather unless they're really top end, right? Because companies have found out that it's cheaper to make shoes this way, and most people don't realize that many of the shoes, the tennis shoes that you buy now, or other types of shoes, they're not made with animal products. But it wasn't that way for the longest time, and I would actually, have to go to Payless, and my students, they're so conscious about everything you wear, and they're always. And I'm like, nope, I go to Payless. That's where I buy it, and like for me, it's a moral choice. They are cheaper, fine. So but it's really interesting how it's changed now because now you can get everybody can buy these shoes and like leather is more high end.
Right.
I think we're on a tangent here, but
Well, so
anyway,
if you were a comic book artist, would you say I'll only work with a writer who is a vegan?
no, I live with a husband who is not a vegan.
Right.
He eats meat. His family eats meat. So I mean, that's like you can see how far my convictions go. But so for example, we get into fights because if I go to a restaurant and I'm paying, I'm like, you're not getting meat because
Wow.
my money is not going to pay for you to kill an animal, and we get into huge fights. I'm like, you
Does
want to
he
pay
have
for
to
your own dinner?
go to the grocery store separate from you with his own
No,
credit
he actually
card?
does the grocery shopping now, but he knows like he buys the food for me and he cooks it.
Uh-huh.
But like early in our relationship, we would have these, these kinds of ideas, like
Mhm.
not ideas, like conversations.
Right.
Um, but like I would say, no, I have to stand by my convictions because like I'm going to say that I'm not going to eat meat, but I'm going to pay for you to have an animal killed because for me, a lot of this industry is about supply and demand.
Right.
So they're going to kill more animals because you ordered this. They're going to keep the supply going, right? And the more people who eat vegetarian, the less animals hopefully have to be killed, right? And
Sure.
so, when I about 15 years ago, like
Less animals will be bred also. I don't
yes,
know.
yeah, and I would go around and you could not get vegetarian food for the life of you. And now almost every restaurant I go to has
Right.
a vegetarian or vegan option.
Yeah.
There has been a
And
huge change.
vegan even more recent than vegetarian. I mean,
But especially in large cities like Los Angeles, you are going to find those options. Not so much like when I'm driving across country, but it's still much easier now to
yeah.
find these options in smaller places. So there has been a change over time when it comes to the food choices that we make. I'm gonna love to read the comments about this now. If
Maybe
people
no one
can
will
be
even
part
get
of the
this
video.
far into the video.
Exactly right.
That's the big stupidity of making hour-long or now an hour and a half long video is most people don't get to the end, anywhere near the end.
And you know what? Sorry, my nose is itching. A lot of people tell me, you touch your nose too often in your videos. I'm like always self-conscious about it. But in the end, I see this as you and I actually meeting for the first time and enjoying each other's company. And if other people don't want to last this long in the video, that's okay because it's their time. But we
Yeah.
get to spend this time together, for the first time. Like, we've only chatted, we've never talked. And so this is kind of us meeting for the first time. And I see it more as this is just like a telephone conversation between us that we're kind of making public.
Yeah. No, I'm all for just doing conversations that are somewhat public. Well, I don't know, maybe this is a harsh criticism. In your music, you're all over the place, right?
Very
You're
eclectic.
exploring pop music, very intellectual music, very extreme music. In your novel reading, you have a very broad range.
All over the place.
In comic books, Marvel and DC, maybe a little Gold Key.
I'm very limited,
You're
right?
very conservative as a comic book reader. What's that about?
I'm going to tell you why. It's money. I started branching out into other forms, and in fact, I was heavily getting into Image because for me, Image seemed to be more adult oriented. Many of their publications, the art was interesting, innovative. The stories were more adult oriented and pushing into different avenues and genres. They just seemed more adult. But the thing is, it's so expensive to have a comic book hobby, right? Because collected editions, they started putting out the omnibus or the omnibus, and I started collecting those, but I quickly stopped. Like, they're so expensive to maintain, and I started getting the Epic collections, and I told myself I'm getting every single one. After I missed a couple, and they've gone out of print, and I said no, I regretted it. And
those are expensive for paperbacks. Those are pretty expensive. Those Epic.
Not really. They're about $25 to $26.
Oh, I thought they were about. I thought they were $40.
They are.
But you've got it in stock.
Larry's Library says you're a chump if you pay full price,
right?
Because you buy it from I order them before they come out a couple months. Like I go and do my order, and I pay the 25, 26. Originally they were 20, and they've gone up to 25, 26. And even that, there's. Originally, they would only put out 1 or 2 a month, but now they're putting out 5 to 6 a month, and so it is actually getting more and more costly. And I told myself, you know what? Maybe you need to stop buying the '90s crap. But I said to myself, you're gonna regret it later. Like, this is a collection that you want. Just do it. Go all in. And but because I'm spending so much on that. Like when
so it's not expensive to collect indie comics. It's expensive to try to collect all the Marvel comics and then buy indies too.
Exactly. And for example, there will be a collected edition of an Image thing that comes out, and those can be about $30 to $35. But they're beautiful hardbound books.
Right.
But then I'm going to have to leave that off because I have to sacrifice. And it's not because I don't want to. It's just because of the finances involved.
Yeah.
Now, I can go to a record store and I can find all types of albums in the cheap, album bin, right?
Yeah.
But it's different when it comes to collecting because for me, the first thing has to be getting those epics monthly.
See, that keeps you from growing as a comic book reader.
You're absolutely right. There's something, but here's the thing. I'm hoping that at a certain point, I'm going to have I have so many of the epics, right? It's like they've put out over half of what they're going to put out, and so it's going to have to slow down at a certain point, But they're smart because now they're reprinting a lot of the ones, which is good, and I don't have to buy those. And they're also putting out a modern epic line.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty cool. And so I got to get those.
Yeah. So you're stuck in the Marvel. You're spending your money in the Marvel ecosystem.
And to be honest, if DC, look at I have my. What am I shaking my beard brush at you for? I wish DC would put out something like the Epic Collection. Like I started collecting all the DC, the golden and the classic, the
Mhm.
Silver Age. I stopped because they were so expensive. I wish DC would put out something like the Epic Collection. And even when they do put out something like the Epic Collection, they mess it up. They started putting out Batman ish like, but they would leave out 3 or 4 issues, and they would just like, I'm just like, no. And I never collected any of those Batman ones because I knew it wouldn't go on. They would only like put out certain runs, but they don't do what Marvel has done. And for a collectionist, Marvel did it the right way. They are putting out everything in order in a book. They don't leave anything out, but they are putting them out of order. So they don't have to be like volume 1, volume 2. You get volume 10, you can go back to get volume 2, but they're not
But
leaving anything out. And for me as a collectionista, I think that's the way it should be done
yeah.
because I want everything. I don't want them deciding, oh,
But
we're
if
going to
you
leave this.
just decided, no, no more Marvel, no more DC, you could get really great indie comics that fill one large volume and they're done.
I know.
And then you move on and like you're reading your Booker Award books. You read other books by the same authors as
You are
one and done
absolutely right.
things.
Now, what I do like is a lot of you put out best of the year
Mhm.
collections, and I do make a list. And I do, and every so
You did
often,
read Black Science, I remember that.
yes, I read Black Science, and I actually you can't see it, but on a shelf below, I actually have a bunch of like the indie titles that I've gone out and I'm like, oh, this was the best of the year, so I went out and bought, and I read them. Um, but here's the thing: sometimes I don't want to keep those long term. Like the art or the writing or something about it, I want to read it, I want to experience it, but I don't want to keep it.
Why
And
do
so
you
then I
wanna
end up having it on my shelf.
why do you wanna keep every which epics are you collecting, like, the Avengers epic
All of them.
collections? And you want every Avengers story is worth reading and keeping?
No, I want them. There, see, that's a problem. I have like this kind of hoarder mentality,
So,
and
and probably with a lot of people, especially Marvel, is in their heads as something they've always loved. So they feel like they need it all.
yep,
But large swaths of it, especially from the 90s, but also from other eras, is not actually that good.
no,
There's
no,
just periodically there's good parts.
yep. But you know what? I'm going to tell you, if there's an author I love, I read every one of his or her
Uh,
books, even if I don't like them all.
right.
Um, and I will collect those books. It's I don't know. It's very strange. I
Is that
actually
same with a group? Like if you love one Bob Dylan album, you have to get every I mean, Bob Dylan's a bad example, but although near the end of his career, you might not want all of those albums.
yes, and you know what? I actually had to break that habit. So I have a vinyl cubby thing here.
Which is always off camera. Maybe
Yeah,
you've shown it in some old
I have,
videos when the
and
angle was different.
I need I need to get to the point where I only have my albums there and nowhere else. And I've gone through videos where I talk about how I like cull my collection and how, but it's heartbreaking because when you get rid of these albums, you hardly get anything for them.
Right.
It's just I don't have the space for them, and later I'm like, oh, why did I get rid of these albums? Like, and I'm getting rid of them just because I don't like the cover art. I'm like, but the music is fine, but there's no way in my lifetime I can listen to all of these things, and I can get them on CD. I have thousands and thousands of CDs. When I'm going to listen to all these, and at a certain point, I'm going to have to say to myself, you know what? You're getting older. You got to get rid of all this stuff. Like you're going to
Yeah.
die, and you're just going to leave all this stuff. What are you going to do with all this stuff? It's like, are you going to leave this for someone to just like they're going to call somebody in and they're just going to sell it for pennies on the dollar? I got to get rid of this.
I'm torn on this because as I get older, I like this stuff more.
I know.
So, yeah, it will be nice for my wife or my daughter not to have to deal with all this junk when I die. But what if I live to 90 surrounded, but not surrounded by all this stuff that I have more and more nostalgia for as I get old?
Yeah. At least you have the digital.
It's it's a it's the pleasure of my last few decades. In a sense, I guess you get tired of people. You like all your old memories of good albums and
And I'm going to bring
books.
this right back to YouTube,
Okay.
because I think this is where YouTube is. Like, I was getting to a point where I was starting. I'm going to get rid of the book. I'm not gonna collect paperback books anymore. I'm going to listen to them, and I started even making a digital file of all the covers of the books that I read. And I thought, you've got to move to where you can do this digitally and enjoy it still, but not buy.
Right.
And right when I was starting to do that, I want to do that Godfather scene. They pulled me right back in.
With
Like,
YouTube.
YouTube sucked me in. Now I can
Right.
justify buying and showing, because it's something I do. And even my husband said, "Oh, you got to go to that store because you have to buy something to show on your YouTube."
You're creating content.
It's like, yeah, you're like feeding into this mania, which
Right.
YouTube does this. And
You can't just hold up your phone and say, "Hey, I just listened to this album." Now
you
you
know
have
what?
to have the album.
I actually do that a lot. I actually post pictures of things that
Uh-huh.
I've read, listened to and read. You've seen in my videos, I actually hold up my iPad and like, oh, I listened to this week, or I saw this movie, right?
I've noticed it with movies and audiobooks. I wasn't sure if you did it with albums.
But no. So what I will do is, like, when someone challenges me or like someone recommends something, I'm fine with listening to it digitally, and then I get clips of it and I show the picture of the album.
Okay.
But I don't have to run out and buy that, right? So that is a good actual shift. If I could do that instead of buying, like, here's another shift that I made.
So if you could just get Marvel Unlimited and be happy with that. Yeah. So I don't yet. YouTube has definitely triggered me into this nostalgic state, I suppose.
Yeah, at some point I'm gonna have to say, you know what, you gotta just. So I spend a lot of money every month on all this.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I enjoy these albums. And here's the thing, I shifted. I said, oh, you know what? I'm a completist. I need every Yes album. I need every Rush album. I need every Queen album. And I said to myself, you know what? No, you are only going to buy album covers that you could display, and you're going to get rid of all the other ones. And I try to turn it into this art piece. And a lot of people on YouTube are like, what is wrong with you? Like, nobody buys music just because of the art on the album covers. And that's what I do, because I can go in and find a bunch of dirt cheap albums for $1 to $3. And I can bring home these beautiful art pieces. And a lot of them are really old. Nobody wants them anymore. They don't like it. They're kind of forgotten classics. And I figured, if I can shift away from, I need every single album in, a collection.
You need to start the album cover collector community, not the vinyl collector community.
Maybe you're right, because I do show off, hey, look at this album that I bought. It was $1, and look at this beautiful cover. And now let's listen to the music, and I will play clips of it, and that kind of thing. It's like, shifting away from, I went to the record store and I paid $40 for this album because it's a brand new release, and then I paid $40 for this. When I watch people's video and they show album after album that they bought, and they're brand new, and they're plopping down
that's $30 or $40 an album
each album, and they show multiples, right? And I'm thinking, like, how do you sustain this? Do you food?
The worst thing, do not spend money just so that you can show something on YouTube. That is where you're really in trouble.
I'm a victim.
Do not go over your budget, but also don't buy, even if you have the budget for it, don't buy it just because you want to show it on YouTube. Buy it because you want it, and then show it on YouTube.
Yeah,
but otherwise you could just show old albums that you bought 40 years ago and have something to show on YouTube.
I just labeled my video Garage Geek is a big fat hypocrite, because I talked about, I always tell people, you don't need to go out and buy, you could just show what you already have. And I went on Whatnot and I bought this many comics, and I'm showing them all. I'm like, I'm a hypocrite. I'm just like, no, I shouldn't be doing this.
Well, I thought you bought them on Whatnot because Whatnot's addictive. I didn't know it was because you wanted to show them on YouTube.
No, I didn't do that to show them on YouTube. But my point was, I'm being a hypocrite because I'm always
Right.
telling people you could focus on what you already have. And then I'm, I'm not,
Right.
practicing what I preach. But
Yeah.
I hope that some people, like, you build up a following of what you do, and then I'm hoping, like my followers, they like me enough where is if I go somewhere different,
Yeah.
they'll be along with me for the journey, because I'm going to make the choice that is healthy for me.
Yeah.
YouTube be damned, right? And then
Yeah.
I'm going to find a way to make that work on YouTube.
Right.
That's
Well, I
Yeah.
probably should edit this out, but because I lecture too much, but don't give more time than you should to YouTube, and don't spend money for YouTube.
No.
And in general, with your hobbies, that's money, just money that you can spare, not money that you were going to put into your 401k or something like that.
No, you don't have to edit that out, because it's sage advice, and we're not saying leave YouTube.
Right.
We're saying use YouTube in a different way
Yeah.
that will be healthy for you. Like, you don't know this, but I am sitting in a room that is piled with things because I don't have the space to fit it all. Like, I have comic boxes that I
Yeah.
have to
And
constantly
that's,
move around, and it's not pretty. And I want my room to be beautiful, where I feel good when I sit down and watch a movie, or when I pull an album off the shelf,
yeah.
or where I read a comic. I don't want to have to look at a pile of boxes. I don't want to live like that. But I'm very constrained with my space, right? And I buy too much. And so I got to find a way to make it work. So,
Yeah. There's got to be a way to put shelves on the
and
ceiling
you
or something.
have a complete storage unit that you are
Yes.
paying for every month. And that's expensive by
Yeah.
the year, right?
But
And so, yeah.
I can afford it
Yeah.
easily.
Good.
And years ago, I couldn't afford to get the hardbacks and things like that. And I didn't. And I went to the library. And part of me wishes maybe I should just go to the library and not fill up my
But
room
you
with
know what?
stuff.
Wouldn't it be so cool if you, like, I've seen these people who take a room of their house
Mhm.
and they fill it with these filing cabinets. They go wall to wall and they divide it. I actually have one filing cabinet that I've done it. No, actually two. They work so well. I wish I had the space to have a
Yeah.
wall to wall, like, and they look nice because you can decorate them, and you could take all that stuff out of storage and then put it in that room.
Yeah.
But anyways, do you have any final? I think we got on
Yeah.
a long.
We went on way too long, but and
I
I'm
don't
going to have to
care.
go soon to pick up my
Yeah,
daughter from her friend's house.
my dog's probably going to go to the
Final
bathroom.
thoughts. Yeah. Well, I
I don't know
love
if
all
there's
this
anything.
collecting and stuff, so I'm in denial about having to get rid of it.
So,
Okay, well, so we'll just end on we agree we both have too much stuff, but we like it.
yep. I guess that's the moral of this tale.
Can you